and everyone's prize catch, Democrat or Republican. The Republicans got him. He was a military man, so the Russians couldn't fool him. He was middle of the road, as were the majority of Americans, and he was friendly to business. That's what most voters wanted. Weary of too much politics and all those foreign crises, they wanted someone trustworthy to tend the store while we got on with the business of getting ahead. Making it was the game, and money was the means of keeping score. Now G.I. Joe was the man in the gray flannel suit. Sociologists called him the organization man. He symbolized the era of making it big. Of course, there wasn't room at the top for all of us, not enough status to go around. But there were plenty of status symbols, and our mass economy democratized our access to them. Cars, for example. We bought the products and the way of life. They were our great expectations, 50s style. A curious thing about those expectations, you made plans for a future that might not happen. My wife, Judith, was busily engaged at the university in chemistry and biology courses, preparing to teach. She was required in one nutrition course to spend a whole semester studying techniques for feeding the entire population of Texas in a nuclear disaster. She also learned to guide children through drills for an atomic attack. All these years later, she remembers the instructions. Under the desk, arms over your head on the floor, eyes closed, and don't turn toward the window. It was a time of testing, literally. Out there somewhere, bombs seemed to be going off constantly. Government publicity tried to keep us on the narrow path between complacency and panic about atomic weapons. Some of us fell off on either side. By 1953, we and the Russians were adding to our inventory of atom bombs something even more powerful, hydrogen bombs. A hydrogen bomb is an explosive so massive that it needs an atomic bomb to set it off. The biggest hydrogen bomb is thousands of times more destructive than the atom bombs that ended World War II. The comparisons at first commanded awe and even dread. The more the stockpiles grew, however, the more people could not comprehend the scale of destruction possible. The government didn't want us to forget. It wanted us on our toes. Paul Revere was now a periodic metallic prophet, warning us of massive retaliation. Sometimes the drill was small scale and a surprise. Other times, whole regions were threatened with imagined overkill and hustled to the hills. For a while, each family was encouraged to build its own little shelter. My Uncle Carl in California said, to hell with it. The race may have started in a cave, but he wasn't going to die in one. Gradually, there were more rebels like him, and a kind of people's revolt put an end to the idea of America surviving underground when the Big Bang burst. We all learned to joke about it. If the Third World War is fought with atomic bombs, we ask, what will the Fourth World War be fought with? Sticks and stones, we answered, and let the government worry about such things. The government was men like John Foster Dulles, Eisenhower's Secretary of State, America's champion brinksman. Brinksmanship was a sporty term for the willingness to take confrontations with the Soviet Union to the very brink of atomic war. At one point, it was termed the New Look policy.
Well, what is this New Look policy? Very briefly, what it provides is that we are not going to allow the communists to nibble us to death with little wars like the one in Korea. That rather than do that, that we are going to rely on the massive retaliatory power of our new weapons to be used against the real source of the aggression at times and places that we choose.
Since neither side could count on being around for the spoils, neither side would ever go over the brink. So reasoned the strategists. This allowed the government room to pursue American interests anywhere in the world, by conventional as well as by clandestine means, each of which proved to be stepping stones to future trouble. In Iran, for example, our Central Intelligence Agency, run by Foster Dulles' brother Alan, helped to throw out a nationalist regime which, it was said, might bring communists into high places or even into control of the oil fields. The man reinstated in power by the CIA was the young Shah, Reza Pahlavi. He lasted until 1979 to be succeeded by the Ayatollah Khomeini. And Guatemala. Our government feared the communists were taking over there too. So we helped bring to power forces friendly to us. CIA pilots actually bombed the capital from unmarked planes. Vice President Nixon went down to help celebrate our friendship with the new head of state, but the whole affair would have far-reaching results. A young communist student named Che Guevara was in the city when the CIA bombed it and would never forget or forgive. He became economic advisor to Fidel Castro. The American people didn't know what their government was up to in such clandestine events. It's not clear if public opinion would have approved, but there was one crisis in which the U.S. didn't interfere, and many wished we had. Hungary, October 1956. A Soviet satellite, one of those countries behind the Iron Curtain, wanted its freedom. When partisans rose up and took control of the streets, there was fierce fighting. Hungarian army units joined the revolt, and victory seemed possible. The pro-Soviet regime collapsed. A new Hungarian state was proclaimed socialist, but independent of Moscow. World opinion cheered for Hungary. The Kremlin was dazed. It even announced that Soviet troops were withdrawing from Hungarian soil. Hungary belonged to the Hungarians. The West was jubilant. A suppressed people overthrowing their communist oppressors was almost too good to be true. Suddenly, another crisis diverted the world's attention and muddied the moral waters. 3 American allies, the British, the French, and the Israelis, had been disputing with Egypt over access to the Suez Canal. Now they launched a surprise bombing raid on the canal and on the Egyptian capital, Cairo. World opinion branded these Western nations as aggressors, and the UN sent a police force. It was a convenient time for the Russians to throw off restraint in Hungary. Back into Budapest went the tanks. The new government was crushed, its leaders executed. The Iron Curtain descended on Hungary once again.
A walk through the 20th century returning.
1957 was to be the beginning of the space age. We had announced that we were going to launch the first artificial Earth satellite in history. Explorer 1 was to be an electronics package about the size of a grapefruit. But once again, the Soviets had prepared a technological surprise. It was called Sputnik, Russian for traveling companion. And travel it did, into orbit around the Earth in October 1957. Not only did it weigh 20 times more than our own satellite, but we could actually see it in the night sky over our own country. President Eisenhower tried to make light of it.
Indeed, this launching of the satellite proves that they can hurl an object a considerable distance. But when you stop to consider that even now, and apparently they have the Russians under a dictatorial society where they had some of the finest scientists in the world that for many years been working on this, apparently, from what they say, they have put one small ball in the air.
But as if to mock us, the Russians put up another Sputnik, bigger than the first, and this time with a passenger, a Cosmomutt, the dog Laika. Enough was enough. The rocket bearing our entry into the space race was hurried to the launching pad in the full glare of publicity. Only to expire minutes later in the glare of failure.
This is for the American people the most critical problem of all. We need scientists.